Civil 3D provides many methods to create points. To create points, go to the Home tab, Create Ground Data, and here's the Points Creation Tools. They're defined in subcategories. We have Create Points Miscellaneous, Create Points Intersection, Alignments, Surface, Slope, Interpolate, and some additional ones as well. I recommend you open the Point Creation Tools toolbox instead of selecting these individually, as there are many settings you need to be aware of prior to creating points. To expand these settings, click the Expand the Create Points tool, and here are the default settings that will be used when you create points. Make note of these default settings as they are very important to you when you create points. This way you can avoid making edits after you create your points. Key settings to be aware of are the default layer, the order in which you define points, northing, easting, easting, northing, etc. Do you want to be prompted for elevations or descriptions? And most important is the point identity. This setting here defines the next point number that will be used when you create a point, using one of the point tools here. Let's go ahead and go over some of the basic point creation tools. Let's create a simple point based on a surveyor's northing, easting, elevation, and description that they gave us because they forgot to provide it in the point file. So now, let's go ahead and create this manual point by using the manual method in the miscellaneous category. As I always say, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window to see what the next step is. It's asking me to provide a new point location. Now I know the northing and easting provided to me by the surveyor, so I can use the transparent commands. Now I don't have the transparent commands open, but I will simply type in the one that I want, which is apostrophe NE for northing easting. Now I will type in the northing that was provided to me by the surveyor. Now the easting. Again, look to the command line window to see what the next step is. The next step is enter a point description. Now because we have a nice set of description keys, I can automate any of the settings or styles when I create this point. This description is a deciduous 6-inch tree. So based on my description keys, I'll type in DECID space 6, and 6 will be used to scale this block automatically. Press enter. I happen to know the elevation. It was provided to me by the surveyor. It's 97.32. And there is our point, just like that. Notice how it scales automatically. Also notice that because Civil 3D makes an assumption that you may want to enter more points based on the northern and eastern transparent command, it keeps the transparent command active. If you don't want to do it that way, press escape. Notice how it puts you back into the original command, which is the create point manual command, and simply press escape again to exit the command. Let's go ahead and locate a point based on two distances that the surveyor's located for us, because let's say they'd already put the survey equipment away for the day and they just taped off two corners of a building. I have also created a predefined circle here for you to zoom into. And let's go ahead and start the distance command from the intersection category. I'll pick distance. Notice what it prompts me for. Please specify a location for the radial point. So I will pick my first point, which does happen to be the point 441. Now I could use the point object transparent command to pick those points, or I could simply snap to them using AutoCAD's node snap, which I happen to have already active. I'll just click over here, and then notice how it's prompting me for the radius. So the first distance they typed here was 8.9. The next point they used was 439. I'll simply node snap to that point, and then notice how it's asking me again for the distance. I'll type in 7.6. Notice how two large X's appear in my view. These points are the intersection of those two circles that were created. They are imaginary circles, so what you have to do is simply click somewhere near the X that you want to pick. Or if you wanted to create both points, you could simply select the All option in the command line window. I'll simply pick here. Notice that I'm prompted for a point description. This is an existing hydrant, so I'll type in EHYD. I don't have any extra descriptions for that. Press enter. I don't need an elevation. This is simply a graphical representation of this object. Press enter again, and notice how it automatically places that object with the correct style based on my description key set. There are many other methods that you can use to create points. Simply navigate to them based on the different categories, and I guarantee you'll find a way to create points however you need to. Point groups are simply a filter of points that share common characteristics. Some examples of point groups are to perform specific tasks, such as creating break lines that will eventually be used to create a surface, override a set of points default layers, override a set of points default point style or label style, create a point group that contains ground points, allowing easier surface management. You can create point groups based on point properties, such as raw or full description, a set of point numbers, name, elevation, as well as many other characteristics. Point groups are located in the Toolspace Prospector tab, Point Groups Collection. I'll expand this collection right now. First thing you notice is that there are 4 point groups in this file. So it makes sense to store your point groups in your drawing template, so when you create a new file, you will have access to all the default point groups. The All Points point groups is always in the drawing and will contain all your points. Notice that I have one called points-eg already in the file, and notice the little icon next to it here. This icon is telling you that this point group is out of date, which means that since you've added points to the drawing, this point group needs to be updated. To update it, simply right-click on the point group and choose Update from the shortcut menu. Those points will now appear in this points-eg point group. Before we continue on, let's create a No Display point group. This will allow us to filter out whatever points we want in the drawing. To create a new point group, right-click on Point Groups and choose New. We'll give it a name called No Display, and I'll set my default styles to None. What I also want to do is I want to include all my points, because the purpose of this point group is to turn the display of points off completely. I'll go to the Include tab, and there's an option here to include all points. I'll toggle that on, and then what I need to do is go to the Overrides tab and override any of the styles or layers to have a style and label style of None. I'll click OK. And because point groups have a priority, and this was the last one created, all my points disappear. To change the priority of a point group, simply right-click on the point groups collection and go to Properties. Notice that No Display is up top. If I want to put all points back to the top here, I would simply bring this to the top. However, what I want to do is I actually want to add in a point group that I already have previously created called For Break Line Creation. What this point group allows me to do is minimize the display of points only based on a description that, let's say, I need to create line work for break lines for a surface. I'll click OK, and right now nothing is displayed because this point group does not have any raw codes that match the codes that are in the drawing. I'll right-click on this point group and choose Properties. Now I need to go to the Raw Description Matching tab, and if I do happen to have a description that was already based on a description key, I could just toggle it on here. Let's say I want to create lake break lines. I'll toggle that on, and I could click OK here. However, let's say I do not have the raw description based on the description key set. You can still type it in. In fact, you can type in multiple descriptions. I could type a comma in to separate them, and let's say type in a code that maybe wasn't part of my description key set just so I could see it. So let's say ERG for edge of road gravel. If let's say a surveyor happened to use that description. Put the asterisk in there to also allow it to grab any points matching ERG and then any text after the ERG. If you want, you can go to the point list here to see what points will actually be added in here. I'll click OK, do a regen all, and notice how only those points that match that description appear. Again, the No Display point group is allowing this filtering to occur because it's the next one in the priority list. Now I could go through and using the Point Object Transparent command, I could create line work to use for surface creation. Let's say I have a set of points that I want to select, but I don't really care about the description. It's just a bunch of points I would like to select to make a point group out of. First, let's go ahead and change the priority list here, and I'll put all my points back to the top of the list, and click OK. All my points appear, and let's say I'm just working in this area of the drawing, and I just want to see just these points. So I'm going to right-click on Point Groups, Create New, and just call this one Working PG. What I can do now is go to the Include tab and click on With Numbers Matching, and make a selection set in the drawing. Also note, you can actually type in a set of numbers. So if you happen to know, let's say the crew used a set of point numbers for that day, you could just type in those point numbers as well. I'll select this button here and just make a selection set of points that I want to work with. Press Enter, and those are all the points. Click OK, Now, because I moved all points on the top of the list, it is actually still above the No Display Point Group. So I can simply right-click on Point Groups, go to Properties, and put No Display right below the Working PG point group. Now I'm working with just those points, and I can do whatever kind of editing or point manipulation
AutoCad provides
many methods to manipulating points once they are in the drawing. You can use grips as well as the point editor to modify any part or properties of those points. Let's go ahead and zoom into a point or two here. And the first thing we want to point out is the grips. So watch what happens when I select this point. Two grips will appear. The square grip is the label grip. I can actually modify this as needed without any effect to the actual point. However, the diamond grip is the actual grip of the point, and if I were to select it right now, it would actually move the point, which would be fine if that is what I wanted it to do. But in most cases, you do not want to simply allow a user to move these points. So you would want to actually lock the points. And we'll go over that as well in this video. I'm going to press Escape to clear my selection set. You can select individual points if you wanted to, and then right-click and go to the Points editor by selecting the Edit Points option here. This opens up the panorama window, and you'll notice that I can change any aspect of these points, whether it's the raw description, the style that it uses. I can even override the description key set by simply changing the actual style that is being applied by the description key. Let's go ahead and assume that this one point actually had the wrong description. So I want to go into the point and actually edit the raw description so that it matches the correct one. In this case, it's a drill hole. I'm going to select that point, right-click, Edit Points, and then in the panorama window, I will change my raw description to DH225. So that's the drill hole number, and now that has that description. However, as you can see, it is not updating in the file automatically. So what you need to do, once you do that, because we want it to match the actual description key set, I will right-click on the All Points point group and go to the Apply Description Keys option. That will update any of the points based on their description key, and just like that, I now have an updated point that leverages the description key set and uses all the functionality within. Notice that the layer is also updated as well for that entire point. So let's go ahead and talk about locking points. To lock your points, simply select the Points Collection in the Prospector tab, right-click, and choose Lock from the shortcut menu. This will lock your points, and if you look at the Points Collection, you'll notice that there's a nice little lock icon on there that now, if I were to select a point or any of the points and try to move them, notice how I cannot move those points. However, as we said, you still can drag the labels and rotate the markers. So before I do so, I want to set my drawing up so it's ready to plot the points that I want to plot. I already have some pre-existing point groups to automate this functionality. I'm going to right-click on the point groups collection and choose Properties. Right now, All Points is the one on top. So what I want to actually do is set No Display to the top. Then what I have here is a point group that allows me to only display the points that I want to plot and actually set the label style to show the description only. I'll set this to the top now. And before I do so, I notice that it's out of date, so I will select the Update Points tool. And now I can click OK. And notice how all the points that are not in the Plotting Points point group will disappear, and only the description label style will appear. So now the only thing left to do is look at my drawing and rotate points and labels. The labels I will not need to rotate at all because they are set to rotate to the view's orientation no matter what layout they are in, which is exactly how I want those to be set up. In fact, if I rotate the view using the view cube here, I'll just rotate this in 2D, just pivoting it, you'll notice that the labels update automatically. In fact, what you can do is you can either use the UCS command to rotate your view to the actual view, or rotate it in a general direction to rotate points as you need to. So in this case, I'm looking around and I want to rotate some of my signposts because they are not rotated to the road. I'll simply pick the signpost point, hover over the point grip, and now I can simply either rotate the label and marker or rotate just the marker. And just like that, I can use the perpendicular if I wanted to rotate that by the line work. If that's not the desired result, simply rotate the marker until you get the desired rotation. Again, I can select multiple, rotate marker, and it's just going to use that one there because I haven't made that one a hot grip. So as you can see, it's very easy to set up Civil 3D to minimize your view for the specific points you want to see, as well as rotating just your points and not the... Civil 3D provides a few ways that you can report on points. You can use the panorama window as well as the toolbox. To use the panorama window and access all your points, in the Points collection in the Prospector tab, right-click and choose Edit Points. All those points will become populated in the panorama window. If I click in here and press Ctrl-A, that will select all my points in the panorama window. Then right-click, copy to clipboard, and what you can actually do, and this is pretty cool, is open up Excel and paste that information into Excel. Notice how it's all comma delimited, just like it appears in the panorama window, and we have all the values that we need. You could save this as an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file right from here. There are also some additional reporting tools in the Toolbox tab. If I expand Reports Manager and there's a Points category, we have Points in CSV, Point List, Radial Stakeout, and Station Offset to Points. This tool here is pretty cool. What you can do is double-click to start that report command. The only problem with this command that I find is that you can't limit it to a point group. So what it actually requires is that you do all the points in the file, or you actually have to toggle each of them individually off and on. That said, what it does here is it requires that you pick an alignment, and then I'll just create the report using all the points I have in my file. And just like that, I now have a point that shows you the station and offset of these points. A little tip that you can do is copy and paste specific points to a separate DWG file to segregate the points that you want to create a report on. This concludes this video discussing creating point reports. In this video, we will discuss exporting points. If you would like to follow along with this video, please open the file 0310 exportingpoints.dwg located in the training folder as discussed in the Working with this dataset video. To export points in Civil 3D, you use the Export Points functionality in conjunction with the point file formats defined in your drawing. We will also discuss how you can actually translate a point file to a different format if you need to. To export points, you can right-click in the Prospector tab, Points Collection category, and select the Export option from the shortcut menu. Also, if you want to simply export a point group, you can right-click on the point group as well and choose the Export Points option from the shortcut menu. Let's go ahead and select all the points from the file. Right-click on Points and choose Export from the shortcut menu. Notice that you are prompted for the point file format to select from the drawing. Again, these are stored in the current DWG file. Choose the destination file by clicking the Browse button. And again, notice how you can actually select a point group to limit the point exporting. I'll click OK, and my point file is exported. To view this file, you can usually just open this up in a Notepad or whatever text editor is your default text editor. There is also an option to transfer points. Let's go ahead and right-click on the points collection and choose the transfer option. So what Civil 3D is asking you to do is first choose the point file format for a file that you want to translate to. And the purpose of this functionality is to, let's say, send this file out to someone who uses a different software application and wants to use the XYZ point file format. So I'll go ahead and select the format that I need and choose the destination file for this. Click OK, and now I have another point file in this folder that was translated to the XYZ type format. This concludes this video discussing exporting points.